Good morning, everyone. I am delighted to welcome you to this panel discussion featuring Allen Chilson and Bryan Pena. Allen currently serves as a talent acquisition leader at Danaher. He has over 20 years of experience in talent acquisition and human resource leadership roles in various industry verticals. He has been recognized by staffing industry analysts as a DE&I influencer and a contingent workforce program game changer. He has also applied expertise in speaking engagements with several professional organizations, including SIA, Club BMSA, and ProcureCon. Bryan is a global thought leader in the extended work and open talent world. Through his boutique consulting firm, Defiant Solutions LLC, he works directly with HR tech companies, enterprise clients, and more. Bryan has been featured extensively as an industry expert on various platforms, including National Public Radio's Marketplace on the Future of Work in America. Bryan may best be known for his time at SIA, where he and his team crafted the revolutionary Certified Contingent Workforce Professional Program, now taught on 3 continents. The panel will be moderated by Maddy Agarwal, Director of Client Services at Indotronics. She has extensive experience in recruitment, delivery, and account management. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Anu.
Thank you, Anu, for the introductions. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to you all to our esteemed panelists, Allen Chilson and Bryan Pena. They say change is the only constant in life. It is inevitable, right? Over the last 20 years, our talent acquisition space has completely changed. It is totally revamped. Remember the time when Excel-based lists were used, newspaper ads were being put in-person screenings happened at the agency's office, paper resumes were being read, and whatnot. We have come a long way. Aren't we all glad that we now have sophisticated technology to hire just in time, helping us improve quality, quantity, and the speed of hires? Let us discuss today how technology is further changing and improving the space in this digital age. Venture capitalists seem to be pumping in more money in this area. Organizations are paying more attention to investing in more such technology tools to acquire talent. Well, I'm very excited. We have great speakers for this session. I'm already feeling the excitement is palpable, and our listeners are leaning in. So let's get started. So the first question is, technology is enabling and empowering talent acquisition teams. What are the top industry innovations in TA that are promising according to you? Alan, you want to start on this question?
Sure. So, I believe there's a lot of new technology out there, but I'm never sure if each of these solutions actually solves an existing problem, right? So I wonder, are they bright, shiny new toys, or are they actually innovative solutions that are needed by companies in our talent ecosystem? The last thing you want to do is add a tool that your team is never or rarely going to use. But I believe there's several technologies out there that are helping staffing suppliers communicate with their workers, which I expect increases engagement of their workforce. I find the candidate identity verification and assessment systems, so I'm thinking like Glider AI, I find those interesting if they can truly help the recruiter move the best technically qualified candidates forward into the screening and interviewing process sooner. But, of course, I also think it's important, and the HR person in me say, the companies also have to consider the potential for adverse impact against any underrepresented groups, if you're using an assessment tool. And then I'm optimistic about the potential for AI-powered chat systems to engage candidates 24/7 on their time and their terms, right? In regards to answering some of the basics, right? Their questions about the company, the questions about the hiring process. But I don't see those AI systems ever replacing the need for human recruiters to view resumes and screen candidates.
I second that, Alan. I really completely appreciate the point and totally agree that there are so many new technologies out there because of this space is just awash in investment. You know, so much of the investment and the changes that we've seen over the last several years have been driven by cheap money and people, hedge funds and private equity getting interested in the future of work, which breeds to a lot of, I don't want to say negative actors, but certainly solutions that are in search of a problem. I think there's a couple of things that I think when it comes to rising technology, I agree that the testing and identity verification items like glider and the like are really transforming. I think some things that I'm really excited about are because my field is really in contingent work, the migration and the ability for individuals to bring their employment elements portable. There's a number of organizations that are creating this notion of portable employability and portable background checks. I think that's really interesting, and that'll save a lot of time in the hiring process, make it a lot easier for individuals to take more control. I think also in the contingent space, the rise of people really choosing to work in a gig capacity. So the rise of talent platforms and the ability for individuals to monetize their experience. There's never been more ways to do that than now. And I think that creates such an existential challenge for modern organizations to create with a valid employment proposition in the face of having, what traditional share of wallet or share of people's time and workforce. So the rise of talent platforms and ever more sophisticated matching algorithms that allow individuals to be made closely matched with the right opportunities. I think we're going to get into this a little bit, but I'm not quite sure that's a good thing. I think we talked about this in some of our pre-calls. I think that everybody in our field or in every field has that one relationship that translated to their career path. And I think the reliance on technology and the rise of technology and what happens is the increasing reliance on using resumes as an ability to match the person with an opportunity. While I understand the scaling of it, it deprives people in HR from the magic that makes R relevant, which is finding potential individuals, seeing the possibility of people, and giving them opportunity to succeed and create kind of new perspectives. The one thing I'm afraid of with all of these technological solutions is homogeneity and the ability just to continue to hire the same types of people. Organizations are not going to be successful in the future, and specifically around achieving any sort of real diversity goals or new thought processes, if they continue to hire the same type of people they've always hired. So the one thing that I feel about all these technological solutions is that they just reinforce a lot of the same type of hiring practices. So what I'm interested in are different technologies and ways in which organizations can connect to as many of them as possible to be able to have as many different accesses to talent as opposed to considering that either full-time or contingent. There's a whole host of ways in which people can engage. We'll get into that in a second. I'm sorry, I digress.
Should we move on?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So the next question is, what areas within the talent acquisition space are not being addressed? I know, Bryan, you covered a bit of that in the previous one. So what areas are not being addressed by such tools or technology today? And there's no adequate addressal of these problems. So what problems do you see these tools not addressing? I know, Bryan, you've partially answered that in the previous, but do you feel strongly about a few more? We can start with that.
Yeah, I think, again, I'll reinforce that point. I think they're missing the magic that comes from making human resources a field that everyone enjoys being in, providing opportunity and creating opportunity for individuals. I think the areas that I think are lacking is really the integration of all the moving parts. There are certain middleware softwares and things like that, but many companies still struggle to integrate all the different ways in which people engage into one sort of unified space. So there is no sort of universal middleware. There's a VMS, that may port into a HRIS system. There's a independent contractor a management system, a freelancer management system. There's a talent marketplace. There's all these different hosts of talent channels, but there is no one unifying technology that connects all of them. And I think that's a real gap. I think the workforce of tomorrow is going to be, multi-channel, omni-channel, across different dimensions, international, and across time zones. So many different HRIS systems and so many different technologies are definitely siloed and don't really apply consistently. So I think that that is one of the bigger missing elements. One, I think there's the missing human element, which I don't know if that's ever going to be addressed in technology. And then the other one is going to be the ability for organizations to consolidate and have a unified perspective on their overall workforce. There is no unifying technology right now.
Allen?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I mean, it's a personal pet peeve, the amount of manager self-service that's out there. When you think about all of us, if you've worked in a corporate environment, or probably even in the agency people that are on the call, think of the journey you go on when you have to get help from your IT help desk, or you have to book travel, or you have to buy supplies, right? So there's, even when you go outside of our talent space, there's all these other tools that come along that are supposed to increase efficiencies. But for the person who only engages in that once or twice a year, they're having to learn a new system. So think about our recruiters, the same thing. So what Bryan was just explaining, if you have all these different technologies and you don't have that common platform they tie into, we're expecting people to be able to work with a lot of different technologies to maybe get a little bit of efficiency out of it. So figuring out how that aggregate platform comes together would be a great thing, right? And the other thing I do worry about when you start thinking about the the talent acquisition space and tools that may not be fitting the needs is everything does start to talk about, hey, you won't need so many recruiters to do this work. But when you really do think about any of these systems, because I don't know that I've heard of an AI system that is perfect at ranking resumes, and you're going to have that person that's a great fit for the role and doesn't make the cut because they built a crappy resume, right? Or they answered one question, maybe with a chatbot asking them some screening questions, answered one thing wrong, and now they're in the reject pile, and they were your perfect fit, right? So you can't really replace the skill and knowledge of an experienced recruiter, at least not yet, right? So I think whereas that promise is out there that we can get efficiencies from these systems, we still need the human recruiters doing the work. And let's face it, that self-service example, a manager still wants to pick up the phone and call his recruiter or HR person for help with getting a new person in. They don't want to go through a portal. So we're constantly trying to drive them to technology, and they still really crave that personal relationship.
Right.
I think that's a really good point, Alan. I think that that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that artificial intelligence technologies are designed to be enablers and of recruiters and increasing efficiency. It does not take the place of. We've done. I've been in organizations where we've done comparisons between which resumes a recruiter would pick for a role versus what some of the top-notch AI at the time would connect for the role, and that matching was very, very low. And that's really an interesting exercise. Is to have, if you're looking at any sort of matching algorithm and relying on it, have your best recruiters look at a basket of jobs and have several hundred candidates, and then have that same basket of jobs and several hundred candidates run through the different algorithms and identify what the matching is. How many times do they pick the same recruiters? Right. And I think you'd be kind of surprised at how different those two scenarios are. We didn't see anybody who really has matched that in anything over than 30%. So I think that it's an interesting exercise. Looking at it and understanding where it fits into your strategy is so critical, and especially as we start to think about diversity and DE&I and opportunity and stuff like that. I completely agree, Alan. I think it's a good point.
So technology is not replacing humans anytime soon, because we are in the human resources business, right? The human touch has to be there. We are not selling commodities. We are dealing with people, and the people touch definitely helps. So thank you for that. The next question we have for the two of you is: since the race for talent is so real, and with candidates being offered so much flexibility now, right, with COVID, work from home, and things like that, are any of these innovations helping companies improve their employer branding? Because the same talent pool is being, let's say, chased or pursued by various companies, right, for the same type of roles. So the challenge of the role itself is not going to be different from one particular bank to another bank and things like that. So how do companies create a differentiation or employer branding as such? Let's say, have you seen any tools or technologies that are helping organizations do that?
You want
Alan,
to start?
you,
All
you
right,
go
yeah,
ahead.
I'll start there. So to me, I think it's going to sound like a really simple answer here, but I think anything that improves the candidate and the hiring manager experience will help a company's employer brand, right? In small little increments. But technology-wise, I mean, things like interview scheduling, automation, and text messaging systems, they improve candidate engagement, they improve the candidate experience. They also produce a faster outcome for the hiring manager, right? Because we're getting a candidate in front of them for an interview quicker. Um, some of the other things, improving applicant tracking systems, or creating the add-ons that help a candidate not have to enter all of their information after uploading their resume, right? So they've already given us their name, their address, their phone number, their email, and we ask them to do that again to fill out the forms. So simplifying that process, and I mean, really, with today's workforce, I mean, you really have to make that stuff something they can do on their cell phone, right? They don't want to sit in front of a laptop or go use a computer at a library. I mean, I saw, my previous employer with a heavy light industrial workforce, COVID became a real struggle, right? Because how did you get those workers to go use a computer to apply into Taleo, right? So it was definitely a challenge for us on the full-time hiring. And I think the services that are available to staffing suppliers now that let them pay their workers on a daily basis, right, through these debit cards or that sort of thing, to me, that's a big perk for non-exempt workers who are living paycheck to paycheck. Or, if you're crowdsourcing workers, I mean, you can pay them that same day for that work they came and did, and that can be a big differentiator, and it goes to your employer brand because they talk to their friends, right? So I think it's really just looking at what this generation of workforce wants, and making their experience easier to get into work. I guess the other thing I think about from a light industrial perspective is figuring out how to break down the background check process, right? To so what Bryan mentioned earlier about portable background checks. If you find that way to do that, so that people can go to work tomorrow when you make them an offer today, that's a big difference than when I've been places where it took 3 weeks to come start with us after clearing a background check. They find another job elsewhere, so that hurt our employer brand that they had to wait so long to come start. So those are my thoughts there.
I love same day pay. I think same day pay and the ability for people to get their money faster is a transformation of the work and employee relationship. The ability for people to get paid in a timely manner, and specifically to your point, Alan, hourly workers who rely on those sorts of things, absolutely game changer. I think also technology that allow for the fractionalization of shift work. Maybe somebody wants to be able to work 4 hours instead of 8. Scheduling technology that allows people to do that, and choose and sort of bid on which shifts they choose to work on, creating some sort of internal marketplace for that. I like internal marketplaces like Gloat and Gig.ai and a whole host of other ones who allow organizations to showcase the opportunities that exist within their company for their internal clients. I think if you remember that at the end of the day, everybody is a consumer and a customer. So things that are relevant to the customer are opportunity and growth in their careers, which are addressed through internal marketplaces and a whole host of other solutions, and then also same day pay, so they get paid in the resources. And I think on the same vein of looking at employees as customers is you have to really be viciously efficient about focusing on the customer journey. Anything that creates friction in the employee experience that doesn't have to be should be a focus of technology, be it changing a beneficiary on a 401k to changing your travel policy to managing your expense systems. We've all been trained by our banks and Amazon how we interact with technology, and recognizing that the bar is incredibly high for how people expect to interact with technology. And you need to be able to deliver against that promise. So you're not competing against your competitors, you're competing against Amazon. You're competing against that experience develops the expectation in the market for how we choose to work and how we want to work. And so knowing and understanding that is going to be absolutely critical for it. So technologies that make it easier for individuals to get paid sooner, I love it. Fractionalization of shift work, and then also internal mobility in marketplaces.
right? We're also seeing virtual interviews happening now more and more. So more sophistication in the tools required for virtual interviews and whatnot is what I feel is needed, as well as, there are so many delays in shipping of laptops and everything because every job requires now a laptop. I
Hmm.
still feel that organizations have not were not ready, right? Were not ready for this change, and so we are seeing a lot of delays in that area as well. So any tools and technology that can help companies, combat this issue of, real delays in getting the laptops across to candidates, because contractors, especially contingent workers, do not want to lose even a week's pay, right? Because they don't want to be sitting idle for a week.
I completely agree, Maddie. One thing I forgot to reference is I was talking to a CEO of a staffing firm a couple of years ago, and we were talking about some of the things that he was investing in. He looked at virtual interviewing and all these other elements that he had spent tons of money on. He said the most effective money that he spent was on a chatbot. And he said the investing in the chatbot into a system transformed his business because it had time and date stamped. So if somebody makes a phone call and says, I need to change my time frame, or I can't come into work tomorrow, or I need to do such and such, having a chatbot function automated that and had a paper trail. So I thought that was just one thing to point out, is that in the face of all the other things, some of the things that we might take for granted have a lot of other secondary uses. So the one element that, again, I physically have heard this a number of times, that was the one that just came into my mind, is the integration of chat technology into your workflow has tremendous value.
And that's true for staffing companies as well, to keep their contractors posted at every step of the way, so that the contractors know what is happening. Let's say there's a delay and things like that, they feel assured that they still at least have a job.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the communicate less communi- more communication is better. More is better in terms of communication.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can conclude that.
chatbots, texting functionality are true game changers. The reliance on
Chatbots. Yep.
texting and the immediacy that we expect in communication is completely accelerating the pace of change.
Right. Agree. So our next question is on our the favorite topic in the industry now. Over the past 2 years, the conversation in the industry has been on, it's always been, but more so recently, has been on diversity in the workforce.
Mhm.
Corporations are racing to measure the diversity metrics in not just their full-time workforce, but also their contingent workforce. Suppliers are taking it, you know, um, positively as well as otherwise, because the ability to measure, right, using technology tools is not easy, and it's in nascent stage, right? So are we seeing any TA tools beginning to address this need in the industry? Or have you, I mean, when you go to all of these conferences and things like that, are you seeing any tools that are promising, that are enabling corporations to, let's say, measure their diversity or meet their diversity goals?
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say I don't know that the tools, have really come along yet to at least not come far enough. But I definitely think there's some potential, right, to leverage some of the newer technologies and process automation to track things and to try to improve that. But I also think there's always that risk too, whenever you systemize something, that you could have some disproportionately negative impact on some of the diverse communities that you're actually trying to help. Um, but I also think before we even try to jump into saying, hey, can the tools or even can the supplier community help us move our diversity goals? I think in the corporation side, right, we still need to do a lot of change management and make sure that there's truly hiring manager buy-in to those company diversity goals, right? And is the manager willing to change the way that they've always hired, right? So are they going to put more credibility because this person sitting in front of them is the nephew or cousin or son of somebody who's worked there before? Or are they truly going to ask the questions we ask them to ask and evaluate them on the right fit to the job? Now, I think once you know you have the buy-in at your company, then you can look to adapt your TA processes and tools to help realize those diversity goals. So, I mean, for example, the thing I think of, and it's a patchwork solution, but here in the U.S. we collect our voluntary candidate demographic information for full-time applicants in our applicant tracking system because we're legally required to collect it. and to report it back to the US government. The rest of the world doesn't really get that perk because you turn that feature off in your applicant tracking system outside of the US because there may be laws that say you can't collect it or that you have to collect different information. But so once we have that, now we can, once we have our committed diversity goals, we can pull a report out of our applicant tracking system. We can know that the candidates our recruiters are presenting to managers. So when I was at BSF, our goal was 50% diversity on the slate that went to the manager and 50% diversity of the candidates the manager selected to interview. So we were able to adapt reports coming out of Taleo to let our recruiters know every day how diverse their slate was, how diverse their interview pool was. The problem is if we're trying to also diversify our contingent workforce, that same information isn't tracked in our VMS, right? So the agency doesn't have it when they're submitting a candidate, so it's not coming into name your VMS. And most staffing suppliers are reluctant to ask for it early on because they're just presenting a candidate. They're not hiring them yet, right? I think we're able to get that from our suppliers once they're placing somebody with us because now they become an employee on that agency and they collect that information. So I think we still don't have a good technology or process in place to try to bring more diversity into the candidate pools that our managers are considering for temporary workers. So I think that's still an opportunity in our industry to figure out how staffing suppliers can ensure, if a company has that 50% goal that BASF had, can we match that for the candidate pool coming into contingent opportunities? So I think that's an opportunity. And Bryan, I don't know what your thoughts are and what you've seen out there too.
I think it's an interesting challenge. I think that one, and it's going to be one that's going to get all the more pressing with the passage of SB 1162 in California, which requires staffing firms to report that demographic information as well as their pay rates to their enterprises. So if you're not familiar with SB 1162, it's also relevant, I think, in similar laws in Massachusetts and New York, I believe. It was passed by Gavin Newsom a couple of weeks ago. Research it. It imposed a whole host of requirements on staffing firms to report. Don't ask me to recite it, but I think that's going to lead to a lot of movement in this regard in terms of presenting diverse candidates and understanding it, because it's going to have to be tracked in some capacity. And there are AI technologies that allow you to take a look at your existing talent pool for how diverse they are. A number of the names of those technologies escape me, but I know a number of them have the ability to look at a given talent pool and align that talent pool with public information against demographic expectations. So you're able to do sort of a forensic review of an existing talent pool as a staffing firm to know where people may be based on a whole host of other public indicators. I can't quite explain how they do it, but I imagine it's there. So I think those sorts of technologies allow you to preemptively identify the diversity status of a given application or a given individual will go a long way in the future. But I think at the same time, part of the diversity challenge is making sure that we don't overemphasize some of the traditional measurements of success, because sometimes diverse candidates might have the same resume or some profile as non-diverse. They come from different backgrounds, they have a different educational path, different resource path with the same levels of experience. So sometimes that's just something I think you need to put that in the system. And then I think the long term, I expect that to become just standard practice. I think 50% is just an amazing goal, and so I'm excited to hear that that's out there. And I really would love to kind of dive into how that translates to in terms of behavior in the hiring practice. Right? Does the 50% translate to more hires in that regard, as opposed to people still hiring the same way? Because we're all at people with habits and biases. I'm curious about how, in your experience when you're at BASF, did that translate to a marked increase in diversity hires when you committed to that goal?
Yeah, and it did, but we also had to, we really repositioned our interviewing process to go along with that. So we shifted, for our exempt roles, we shifted to what we call impact-based hiring, and we started breaking down job descriptions and taking out the traditional laundry list of you must be a chemical engineer, you must have X number of years of experience in the chemical industry, all those sort of things, because we wanted our managers to start thinking about is, hey, maybe a lot of women engineers haven't come into the chemical industry before, but they're in the food industry, right? And do they have transferable skills and experience? And once you started breaking that down with leaders and hiring managers, they said, well, yeah, they would. Okay, well, let us change your job description, right, and make this list of laundry shorter. And let's, we did some of the language changes too to make sure our wording was less masculine, to make the roles attractive to women as well. But we did start seeing that needle moving, and I want to say it was an easier impact to make in the exempt world and the professional world than it was to change the mindset of our non-exempt managers in the manufacturing plants, right? And that's where you get a lot of that, hey, I want to hire somebody because their uncle used to work here, or that sort of thing, because they're from a good family, right? And it's like, okay, they're from a good family, but we need to change the model and bring more women and more minorities into the roles. But it did make a difference. But I also saw that the trickle down theory of the messaging kind of stopped at a certain level. And we had to do a lot more work to get the message about the 50% goals into the non-exempt hiring community.
Nice. So I wanted to also talk about returnship opportunities that most corporations are now running, and I personally feel they're great. I don't know if technology is addressing or enabling returnship, but returnship is something that is very near and dear to me. I just want to give an example. One of my friends got through the channel for returnship at a bank, and she was plucked out of there and given a vice president role. So, it feels nice that, all of these returnship opportunities are now, coming up. And I also liked about how California now needs all those reports from companies that will force them in a good way, right? In a good way, because the onus is on all of us, corporations, suppliers, recruiters, to promote diversity, so that the workplace is a better place because of diverse views from gender diversity and things like that. So I personally feel this is a good area for changes to happen.
I have a real quick question. I'm curious about all the folks. We have a bunch of people on the phone. I'm really, really curious, and just put their feedback in the chat if they will. I'm sorry, Matt, I just want to ask this question. How do they feel about pay rate transparency? These are people who are in the trenches, who are hiring on a day-to-day basis. Does pay rate transparency make your job easier, more difficult? Are the expectations changing in the role? It's more of a question I just want to ask and see if people will just put in the chat than me asking anything directly. It's not necessarily a polling question, but I'm just curious, because it's living in California. It's all the rage. It's on the news. People are talking about it all the time, and I think there's a lot of good reasons to do it. But I'm curious about the people who are in the trenches hiring. Do you guys think it's a good thing? Do you think it's going to make your jobs easier, or they move the needle? So anyway, I just want to ask the question of the audience. And sorry, Maddie, go on.
Let's see if any of our audience has any comments on Bryan's point. Is it making it easy, or how do you feel about the requirement to be transparent about wages and things like that?
Yeah. So when we're waiting for people to respond, let's keep going. Oh, Maddie, you're muted. Sorry.
I wanted to add that Indotronics is reporting diversity reports and EEO reports submissions we are making to our clients. It is enabling clients to collate the diversity in their applicant pool. We are doing it across our talent pool, and we welcome you all to view our first formal diversity report for 2022 on our website. It is already ready and put up. So we welcome all of you to go and look at the diversity report on our website. So we are reporting diversity. We've started. Anyways, it is going to be imperative to do that in short or long term. So we've already started doing it, and it's already on our website. So you all are welcome to. Did we get any?
I didn't see anything, but we'll keep going.
Okay. So we wanted to do a short poll. I don't know if we have time for that. So I'll move on to the fifth question, which is on total talent acquisition.
Oh, somebody said they like it. So I clicked that. I didn't know what I was doing there. So how do I get that off? Oh, there we go. That's great. Thank you, Venkat. That's the wrong button.
I wanted to cover this, so I'm going to skip that poll because this is an important question. total talent acquisition and management have been very hot buzzwords in our industry. Total talent acquisition itself is a technology solution that is very popular whenever there is a topic on technology and talent acquisition. So there are two parts to this. How do you define TTA or TTM? And what are your opinions about a unified platform? I know, Bryan, you covered it slightly, but we
Sorry.
can go in detail. What are your opinions about a unified platform for sourcing and managing any type of worker, be it full-time or contingent labor?
Yeah, so I think, Maddie, I think of those two terms as two independent definitions, right? So I think a total talent acquisition, it's sourcing a candidate pool with a desired skill set and experiences, and then placing them in both full-time or contingent roles as they arise, right? And then, in my opinion, total talent management involves much more, right? It considers the full life cycle of an employee or contingent worker. It's based on a long-term strategic workforce plan, and you'd have learning and development, you'd have internal mobility, you'd have other departments involved with that total talent management strategy. And really it's even a big assumption because I've not worked a lot of places, but assuming you have a long-term strategic workforce plan in place, right? Because to me, you really have to be working to that. And then, thinking about the technologies, I mean, applicant tracking systems, I've never talked to a recruiter who loved the applicant tracking system they were working in, so they're hard to source from. They're easy to manage a requisition in, right? So for their original application of track the hiring activities so you can report it back to the government, great, but not a great sourcing system. And they're not designed to have proper CRM functionality or to build talent communities. So I do think there's an opportunity out there for the right technology platform to enable centralized candidate sourcing for both full-time and temporary roles. And I think the biggest concern with this approach that I'd have is that talent acquisition is not usually resourced properly to do candidate curation with the talent community, and also is traditionally focused on the transactional process of filling a requisition in the shortest amount of time. So I think a company that wants to implement TTA or TTM, they have to be willing to invest in the TA resources and or the right vendor partners to do that curation, to change the way that they're interacting with candidates. And then I think they also have to change their mindset to building long-term candidate relationships versus simply closing a requisition, right? So I think it's a mindset shift in addition to resourcing.
I think for the longest time, and Alan, I couldn't agree with all the things you said more. I think for the longest time, total talent management was another sort of buzzword in search of a problem. One more thing for people to try and sell you. And it wasn't until really the pandemic hit that a lot of these things took off. And the way that I look at total talent management or total talent acquisition is the differentiation between the lake and the river. Okay. The traditional HR strategy is lake. You want to fill that lake up with as many full-time hires and people. You want to make sure that lake is stocked appropriately and with the type of fish that fit into our menu of recipes, whatever. That was to carry on with the metaphor. And that was the way it was. It was all centered around containing a finite perspective on talent and a finite sort of way that you approach your talent strategy. The talent strategy of the future is more of a river, and an effective organization, instead of having a big lake, is going to have the ability to dip into a fast-moving river for the right sort of talent, to engage them in the right sort of way at the right time, at the right cost, in the right jurisdiction, for what have you, in the right mechanism. So that means, in my mind, the true successful talent strategy to become a competitive differentiator, which is the highest order of a talent strategy, is not necessarily put butts in seats, but how can you as an organization leverage human capital to create a competitive differentiator in the market? That is the goal of an HR strategy, is that. How can we create something that aligns talent and utilizes talent in all of its forms in such a way that we create competitive advantage? The way you do that is by having, in many ways, as many lines to dip into that river of knowledge and skill and wisdom as possible. So that means that your talent strategy, every talent strategy should be a total talent strategy. You shouldn't just focus on the way that you put full-time butts in seats, but how do you engage your agency temps, your independent contractors, your freelancers, your contract workers, your outsourced workers, your remote workers, your call center folks, your service providers, your management consulting partners. All of those things need to go into the soup of a talent strategy. And so total TTA Totally agree. But TTA needs to be bigger than agency or full-time. It needs to be the whole rainbow of engagement mechanisms. And then talent management should be the full overarching governance strategy that you as an organization consider to create that competitive differentiator and set your organization for success. This, to me, is the clarion call for where HR, which has always wanted to have a seat at the table, this is the sort of thing that gives us a seat at the table, is the ability to leverage talent in such a way that we can create a better business, not just a business that sustains, but a transformative business that sustains. And that's why TTM and TTA are central to that strategy, and really, I think, central to the modern HR moving forward.
I want to add a use case here. Large corporations are engaging, let's say, contingent workforce or workers for 6 months or a year, let's say 1.5 years, or companies that have a cap, let's say, on how many months a contract worker can continuously work and things like that. And once they end, they're gone. But they are people who know your organization. They know the work that you're doing. Let's say they know the function that they were a part of, right? And they know people there, but they're gone. I mean, nobody is thinking, how do we re-engage these workers, right, on other teams, or let's say place them in full-time positions that might be open with the same skill set requirement. So
Yeah.
I feel that is I feel sad when a worker comes out and he's a great candidate, and the onus is on a staffing company like ours to, okay, let's see what other positions are open. But how about the full-time side, right? There are certainly positions that are going unfilled for a long amount of time, because corporations are not thinking, okay, let's re-engage, let's let HR systems talk to the VMS systems to see, okay, who's coming out, and let's re-engage these people, because they hold knowledge about your corporation, so which can be totally useful. So I see that not happening today, and TTMs and TTMs might
Well, because at the end of the day, candidates are customers. And if you look at the customer journey of any marketing organization, they don't just do a one and done. They sustain the relationship over time. I buy a car, they're going to send me communications about what's happening with the brand and the car and ways they can sell me more cars or service plan, whatever. People, that's talent retention and acquisition in HR is a marketing function. It's a marketing function at its core. So if you recognize that it's a marketing function, then you approach everybody who's ever worked for you as a customer or a potential customer, and find ways to maintain that community and connection. And I think that, again, going back to the same statement, the talent strategy of the future is going to be much more customer focused, a tech-enabled customer focused, and you're going to have drip campaigns around all of your contingent workers to create this talent pool that you then can source all types of work from, and should have those individuals who are going to have time to value that's going to be much more accelerated. So I completely agree, Maddie. I think that it's a missed opportunity. And in many ways, Allen, you know this, that the measure of contingent program hire quality is how many of those are converted to full-time hires. That's a goal.
Sure. Yeah.
So you know
I agree.
if you're hiring people full-time.
Yeah.
Right, but that's within the teams that they were introduced to. So but not, we're not cross-selling those candidates to other teams in the organization that have, let's say, full-time or contract positions.
Yeah, we need to figure out how to have that Yelp review system internally, right? So that a manager gives feedback on this person who just completed an assignment, and somehow we're keeping a library of that. No guarantee in the future when there's a need for that person's skills again, they're available, but that would be the first person you'd want to go to if you could have this review system. And I think the freelancer marketplaces and things like that will evolve to where you're going to be able to regenerate that talent connection a little better. But it's a perfect point, Maddie, because it's a really big miss right now. It happens with those we bring in for payrolling too, right? So our managers tap into somebody who's great from their past network, bring them in for a 3-month assignment, payroll them, but nobody knows about them. That assignment ends and they go away, right? And our payroller has no reason to represent them. So we do need to find a better way of keeping that talent connection live.
Thank you. Thank you both for your time. Thank you, Bryan, for the various metaphors. It became easy. And Alan, your view on from the corporation side was great. So yes, thank you so much for your time.
All right. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.